My 7-year-old niece ruined Christmas. I've never been prouder. I woke up at 6 a.m. to the sound of glass shattering downstairs. I ran down expecting a break-in. Instead, I found my niece, Poppy, standing in the middle of a demolition site of wrapping paper and broken plastic. The wreckage of what used to be her cousin's presents, a hammer still in her small hand. Our presents, the boys screamed, dropping to their knees, scrambling through shattered tablets and gaming headsets like the pieces might reassemble themselves. My brother David, the boy's father, started moving toward the hallway closet, eyes locked on Poppy, reaching for his belt. Before he got there, the boys, 13 and 15, lunged at her and tackled her to the ground. They hit her, clawed at her face. Nobody moved to stop them. I had to pull them off myself. When Poppy finally got back up, she was bruised, bleeding from her eyebrow, and completely calm. Her chest was puffed out. There was a faint smirk on her face, like she was proud of what she'd just done. "Where's our good presents?" the boys shouted again. That's when everyone noticed. The really expensive stuff, the PlayStations, the iPhones, wasn't just broken. It was gone. Not wrapped, not smashed, simply missing. "Poppy," I said quietly, kneeling beside her while David wrestled his sons back from the kitchen, where they'd gone digging for knives. "Tell me what happened." She looked up at the family gathering around us, all of them horrified, and said flatly to David, "Your sons are bullies." He lunged. I caught his arm before he reached her. "Last year," Poppy continued, blood still dripping from her eyebrow, "they destroyed my friend's Christmas present when she brought it to school. Her mom saved 6 months for that dollhouse. They stomped on it while she cried. We never knew." David started. "I told you at Thanksgiving," Poppy cut in. "This whole year they destroyed everything I got. My telescope, my art set. They set it on fire." Her voice cracked just slightly. "And you told me they burned the only photo I had of my mommy and daddy before they died. You told me I should stop being mad at them, that they were just kids playing." I felt sick. I'd been working overseas. Poppy had never told me any of this. "Is this true?" I said, louder than I meant to. The room shifted uncomfortably. Nobody would meet my eye. Poppy wiped blood off her face. "So yeah, I destroyed their presents," her sister-in-law gasped. "But that's not why I did it," Poppy interrupted before anyone could react. The room went dead silent. "Sweetheart," I asked, "why did you do it then?" She pointed across the room to our grandmother, sitting quietly in her Christmas pajamas, staring blankly ahead, lost somewhere in her dementia. "They stole from Grandma. $2,000. For the first time all morning, the boys' faces actually dropped. "That's impossible," David said. Poppy stood up straighter. "Last Tuesday night, I couldn't sleep. I heard footsteps in Grandma's room at 2 a.m. The room went even quieter. I watched them take her card out of her purse. They found her pin in her diary. Then they snuck out." She looked at their mother. "I followed them to the ATM." "You're lying," one of the boys tried. Poppy pulled out her phone. "I have a video." The footage showed both of them at the machine, withdrawing large amounts over and over. They started to shake. Their father grabbed Grandma's phone with trembling hands, pulled up the banking app, and checked the withdrawal history. His face drained of color. "Son, why would you?" "She gave us that money," he whispered. "She wanted us to have it," one of the boys shouted, desperate now. That's when Poppy ran upstairs. We heard drawers slamming. She came back down clutching a folded letter, written in Grandma's shaky, careful handwriting. "Dear Poppy, I'm getting worse. Some days I don't remember breakfast, but I remember the $2,000 I saved for Christmas charity. I want poor families to have presents. If I forget, please remind me. Love, Grandma." David nearly broke. "Why didn't you tell me, Poppy?" "I did tell you," she shouted. "You told me to stop lying. You slapped the phone out of my hand when I tried to show you the video. You hit me when I tried to look for the money." He put his head in his hands. Their mother glared at the boys through tears, and for the first time, it was obvious there would finally be real consequences. "So at 3:30 this morning," Poppy said, "I listed all my cousin's best presents online for free. That's why they're gone. I didn't take a single dollar for myself. People came and picked everything up within minutes. Nobody could protest. There was nothing left to argue. The fight." That's when the older boy made his move, bolting to the kitchen. Drawers slamming, reappearing with a knife clutched in his hand, charging straight at Poppy. I threw myself forward and caught his wrist inches from her face, twisting his arm hard to the side. He fought back harder than I expected for 15. We spun, struggled, while everyone else stood frozen. His brother jumped in to grab my other arm. I yanked free, kept twisting until his fingers finally started opening, but he caught the knife with his other hand before it fell. The blade sliced across my forearm mid-struggle. Pain shot up my arm. I didn't let go. I got both hands on his wrist, bent it back until he screamed and dropped the knife. It hit the tile, and I kicked it hard enough to send its lighting under the stove, out of reach. Blood was already soaking through my sleeve. I shoved him back into the wall and stepped directly between him and Poppy, who still hadn't lost that same defiant expression. "Nobody moves toward that knife. Nobody moves toward Poppy," I said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. Poppy's face was still bleeding, but she wasn't crying. I needed her somewhere safe. "Take Grandma upstairs to the bathroom and lock the door," I told her, without taking my eyes off the boys. She led Grandma up one careful step at a time while I blocked the stairs stairs with my body, arm throbbing, still functional enough to matter. Once I heard the bathroom door lock click into place, I pulled out my phone one-handed and dialed 911. "We have a juvenile who attacked a 7-year-old with a knife," I told the operator. "Multiple injuries, suspected elder financial abuse. We need police and an ambulance." David grabbed for the phone, begging me to hang up, insisting we could handle this as a family. I shrugged him off. His wife was already scrolling through their bank account with shaking hands, watching more and more unexplained withdrawals appear. The younger boy tried to bolt for the stairs, claiming he needed to delete something. I body blocked him hard enough to knock him backward. "You're not going anywhere near Poppy, and you're not deleting anything. Police are already on their way, and everything's already backed up." Their panic was instant and total. The officers arrived. Sirens grew louder outside. 2 officers came through the door, hands near their holsters. I raised my good hand, kept pressure on my bleeding arm with the other. "I'm the one who called. There's a knife under the stove." The lead officer, Mercier, took one look at the blood and chaos and immediately radioed his partner to secure the scene. I gave him the full rundown fast: the attack, Poppy, the stolen money, years of ignored bullying, while blood kept soaking through the towel on my arm. "Cuff him," Mercier told his partner, nodding at the older boy. Handcuffs clicked into place, and just like that, he looked exactly like what he was. I called Poppy and Grandma down. Mercier's expression changed the instant he saw Poppy's face, the cut over her eye, the bruises already darkening. He called for paramedics immediately. "Sweetheart, do you feel safe showing me that video?" he asked her gently. Poppy pulled it up without hesitation. Mercier watched every second, jaw tightening, then looked at the boys with open disgust. Paramedics arrived and treated me first. No stitches needed, just cleaning and a tight bandage, then moved to Poppy. "This needs proper closure at the ER," one of them said, "and we should x-ray these bruises to be safe." Grandma kept touching Poppy's face, asking if she'd done something wrong. Mercier had me retrieve the knife with evidence tongs, bagged and logged it, then set up a recorder to take my full statement. David kept trying to interrupt, insisting things weren't that bad. Mercier shut him down every time. When Mercier asked why none of this had ever been reported before, David mumbled something about kids being kids. Even he didn't sound convinced anymore. "We're looking at assault with a deadly weapon, elder financial abuse, and ongoing child abuse allegations," Mercier said. "This will trigger mandatory report to CPS and Adult Protective Services." Grandma wandered in from the hallway asking where her purse had gone. She needed to give money to poor families for Christmas, she said. Nobody in the room could look at her. Mercier asked if I wanted to press charges and request a protective order for Poppy. I said yes immediately. David grabbed my arm, begging me to reconsider, insisting it would ruin his son's futures. I looked him in the eye. "Your son just tried to kill my niece with a knife." The hospital. Poppy needed stitches, so I rode with her in the ambulance. Somewhere between the sirens and the hospital doors, the adrenaline started wearing off and her hands began to shake as she told me, in a steady but tired voice, exactly how she'd planned it. Waking up at 3:30 a.m., listing the presents online for free, writing, "First come, first serve," watching people show up within minutes. At the ER, the triage nurse marked it as suspected abuse on site and brought us straight back. She photographed every bruise, asked Poppy gentle questions. The doctor who stitched her eyebrow talked softly about her cat and favorite movies the whole time, asking permission before every step. I held Poppy's hand through all 5 stitches, prouder of her than I'd ever been of anyone. A hospital social worker arrived to file the mandatory CPS report, standard procedure, she explained, and it would actually help us secure protective orders faster. I agreed without hesitation. A tech came in from Mercier. The knife was logged as evidence. Both boys were being processed at juvenile intake, and the older one might face detention given the weapon. I rewatched the ATM footage on Poppy's phone while we waited, feeling sicker each time. 2 boys, fully aware their grandmother had dementia, calmly robbing her blind. I backed the video up to 3 separate cloud accounts and emailed a copy to a trusted friend overseas, just in case anything happened to the phone itself. David texted, offering to fix this if I dropped the charges, insisting the boys had learned their lesson. I screenshotted it and didn't respond. Later, another text arrived, this one threatening to call my employer and report me as unstable if I didn't back down. I screenshotted that one too, then blocked his number entirely. A victim advocate walked us through what came next: court dates, custody hearings, counseling referrals. Poppy listened to every word, asked if the boys would go to jail. The advocate explained juvenile detention carefully, promising there would be real consequences either way. While we waited on discharge paperwork, the bank's fraud department called about Grandma's stolen money and delivered the gut punch that, because the correct PIN had been used, it legally counted as an authorized transaction, making recovery nearly impossible without a subpoena. A CPS worker named Jenny arrived not long after, interviewing Poppy alone per protocol. Through the door, I heard fragments of things I'd never known: being locked in closets, having food taken away, away, years of quiet cruelty happening while I was overseas working. Every sentence made my stomach turn. Jenny came out and asked whether I could take Poppy in, even temporarily. I said yes before she'd even finished the question, travel schedule or not, problems or not. She called David right there in the hallway to lay out the new no-contact order. I could hear him yelling through the receiver. Jenny stayed perfectly calm and simply repeated the terms until he ran out of argument. Building the case, we finally left the hospital near noon, discharge papers and wound care instructions in hand. Poppy fell asleep within minutes of getting in the car. I drove home checking the mirrors more than I needed to, half convinced we were being followed even though the boys were both still in custody. That evening, sitting beside her while she rested, I started a notebook. Keep Poppy safe, show up to every appointment, take it one day at a time. It felt like the only structure I had left to hold on to. The court hearing came 3 days later. The judge reviewed the video, the medical photos, the bank records, everything lining up in exact, damning detail, and ordered the boys to stay away from Poppy completely while CPS investigated the home. David sat with his head down the entire time. Afterward, I learned the older boy wouldn't speak to anyone at intake, just glared. The younger one broke down and admitted everything, not just what they'd done to Poppy, but to other kids as well. The intake officer mentioned the possibility of a diversion program if they showed real remorse. Meanwhile, David's wife hauled in tears, admitting she'd suspected things were getting worse but hadn't wanted to believe it. Going through the boys' phones afterward, she'd found Tech bragging about making Poppy cry, videos of them destroying her things while laughing, even searches for how to hurt someone without leaving visible mark. It was too little, too late, but I told her to hand every bit of it over to investigators anyway. Grandma needed a proper memory care facility, but every place had a waitlist months long and a price tag none of us could afford. Twice that month, she wandered off on her own, once toward a bus stop, trying to reach a church to donate money she didn't have, once found confused in a grocery store, convinced she was shopping for a fundraiser. The stress of everything happening around her seemed to be accelerating her decline. Diversion, not disappearance. At the preliminary hearing, the prosecutor laid out a diversion program: restitution, counseling, community service. If completed, no formal charges would follow. Part of me wanted harsher consequences, but Poppy needed stability more than she needed revenge, and I agreed, on the condition that the protective orders stayed fully in place. The restitution itself became its own complicated mess. Since the stolen money had gone straight into presents Poppy had already given away for free, the boys would have to pay it back slowly, through part-time jobs, over the course of a year. I took a month of unpaid leave from work, submitting every CPS and court document as proof. It drained my savings fast, but there wasn't another option that made sense. Poppy started 2 crisis counseling sessions, learning breathing technique for the nightmares that had started. I called every therapist on the referral list daily, hopping for a cancellation. Meanwhile, David and his wife worked through mandated parenting classes and home visits as CPS's investigation continued. The boys, staying with their aunt, apparently made the arrangement miserable for everyone involved. Not my problem to solve anymore. The diversion program itself started rocking. The older boy lasted 3 days at a fast food job before getting fired for arguing with his manager. The younger one lasted 2 weeks at a grocery store. Their probation officer made it clear that quitting repeatedly would end the diversion deal entirely. David, meanwhile, dragged his feet through court-ordered anger management, showing up late to his first session and getting moved to the front row after ignoring the instructor to check his phone. A school counselor met with Poppy, and instead of pushing any big forced forgiveness narrative, focused on small, practical steps. Could she handle the cafeteria again? Would a buddy system help? What would make her feel safe in the hallway? No timeline, no pressure. Poppy came home lighter that day than she had in weeks. Jenny came by again to walk through kinship care paperwork, the possibility of permanent guardianship, monthly financial support, help covering therapy costs. It was an enormous decision, but it also felt like the only one that made real sense. A few days later, David's wife texted a photo of a receipt, the boys' first restitution payment, $50 from a fast food check, $20 from a paper route. At that rate, paying back $2,000 would take years, but it was undeniably something. Where it landed. That night, with Poppy finally asleep against my shoulder, breathing steady for what felt like the first real stretch of calm in weeks, I looked back through everything that had happened since that 6 a.m. crash of glass, the knife, the hospital, the CPS interviews, the endless paperwork, and understood something I hadn't expected to learn from a 7-year-old. She hadn't destroyed Christmas out of spite. She'd spent months being ignored, disbelieved, and hurt by the people who were supposed to protect her. And when nobody listened, she built her own case, timed, documented, backed up in triplicate, and detonated it in the one moment guaranteed to get everyone's full attention. The family that emerged from that morning wasn't whole. Money was tight. Grandma's care was still unresolved. Nothing wrapped up clean. But Poppy was safe, finally believed, finally protected, and for the first time since I'd come home, that felt like more than enough. enough. Months later, the first custody hearing that mattered, the real one, not just the emergency protective order, landed in early spring. By then, I'd moved into a bigger apartment, one with an actual second bedroom instead of a pull-out couch, and Poppy had picked out her own comforter, dinosaurs on one side, planets on the other, because she genuinely could not decide. The judge granted me permanent guardianship. David didn't contest it in the end. His lawyer advised him it would look worse than doing nothing, given the CPS findings and the ongoing juvenile case against his sons. His wife cried through most of the hearing. I don't think it was about losing Poppy so much as finally facing what they'd let happen under their own roof for years without stepping in. The boys stayed in the diversion program, on and off. The older one nearly got pulled out of it entirely after skipping 3 counseling sessions in a row, and his probation officer gave him one final warning before the whole deal would collapse into formal charges. He finished it, barely, right before his 16th birthday. The younger one actually stuck with a part-time job at a hardware store, and according to his mother, seemed genuinely different by summer, quieter, more careful, apologetic in a way that at least sounded real. I don't know if it was true change or just fear of consequences finally catching up to him. Maybe it doesn't matter which, as long as Poppy never has to find out firsthand. Grandma's situation resolved itself in the saddest possible way. Her health declined enough that Medicaid coverage kicked in for a memory care facility we'd been told for months we couldn't afford. I visit her every other Sunday. Some days she remembers Poppy's name. Some days she asks where her purse went and whether the poor families got their presents yet. Poppy always tells her yes, they did, don't worry. It's not exactly a lie. Restitution payments kept trickling in, inconsistent, sometimes late, always smaller than the number actually owed. But the court kept the payment order active, which meant it would follow the boys well into adulthood if they ever stopped. David's wife started sending me quiet, apologetic updates every few months, less about the money and more, I think, about wanting some kind of ongoing connection to Poppy that I wasn't ready to offer yet. The school counselor's slow, patient approach worked better than any of the initial trauma therapy referrals. By the following fall, Poppy was back in the cafeteria, had 2 new friends who knew a version of the story but not the worst of it, and had started keeping a locked journal she writes in most nights, not because anyone told her to, but because she told me once. Writing it down means it's mine and nobody can take it away or pretend it didn't happen. I think about that 6 a.m. crash of glass more than I probably should. At the time, it looked like chaos, a child destroying Christmas out of nowhere, a family falling apart in real time. It took hours to understand it was actually the opposite. It was the most carefully planned, most controlled thing anyone in that house did all year. A 7-year-old who had been disbelieved every single time she tried to tell the truth finally built a version of the truth loud enough and undeniable enough that nobody in that room could look away from it anymore. She didn't ruin Christmas. She ended the one where nobody was listening, so we could finally start the one where somebody finally was. Like and subscribe for more videos like these. Thanks for watching.